So, what is an improvised herald? Well, it's long form improv. If you're on an improv team, the herald is, probably like something you want to strive to get to. It's a very difficult art form. It's a very difficult show to master. It takes a lot of moving components, paying attention, listening. But in reality, what is a improvised herald? So, let's use an analogy to describe a improvised herald. Let's say that you are standing in a hallway, a classroom hallway, right? And it's a long hallway, and as you're walking down the hallway, on each side there are doors, right? And as you look into the doors, you're looking into other classrooms, okay? And so let's say, for example, you look into one classroom door and it's a show, it's Mean Girls is going on. And then you look at another door and it's Adam's Family. And then you look at another door and it's Finding Nemo, right? So you see these three different universes, different worlds going on in these three separate classrooms, right? Then you see at the end of the hallway, there's another door that leads into a big theater room. So it's a big theater, big stage, right? And then you go back to those different universes. And let's say you take one of the characters from Adam's Family. Let's say you take like Wednesday. And then you take one of the characters from Finding Nemo, such as Nemo. And then let's say you take both of those characters down the hallway and into the room and put them together and then have them do a show and justify why those two characters are now doing a show of Wednesday Addams and Finding Nemo together. And that's kind of an analogy of what the Herald is. It's that you are creating all of these different universes, and then they slowly kind of start to come together. Another great analogy would be is if you are a superhero fan, if you ever saw the newest Spider-Man movie, where all of the Spider-Mans got together, right? And they all got together in that universe, right? Like there's the multiverse, and then in the movie, all the villains from all of those different multiverses come together, and then all of the Spider-Mans all come together, and they fight and they save the day. That's also kind of an idea of what the Herald is. It's that you're creating different independent universes, and then at some point, they all start to combine with each other to form one big show. And to me, I always break the Herald down into it's almost like a two act. It's a two-act show, right? The first act is where your improvisers are creating these universes, right? So maybe they create like this is a universe where the scene is about pirates, and then maybe this one is about a set of parents working on their house, and then maybe this universe over here is about astronauts or something, right? So they in the act one of the Herald, they're creating all of these different scenarios with these characters that all have their own independent today's the day, objectives and wants, and all of these things, right? Then we get into act two of the Herald, and that's where these universes start to combine with each other. So we might see, for example, the pirate character, shows up in the astronaut scene, and the improvisers know to justify why that character is now in that universe and vice versa. So all of the universes start to combine with each other to almost form like a one-act play. So let me rephrase that. So with the Herald, I always consider that it's two parts or two acts. The first act is the improvisers are creating all of these different universes. And then the second act is where you take all of those universes and you combine them. And the second act is almost like a one-act play. Does that make sense? I think so. I'm going to say it one more time. First part, creating universes. Second part, treat it like a one-act play where all the universes come together to form a hilarious scenario. And then the way you end the Herald is that your improvisers start to identify as the show is going on a centralized theme or something that connects everybody. And so a Herald usually ends two ways. Either your tech director will do a blackout when it gets a big laugh on a high note, or if you're a seasoned Herald team, you will end it where there's like a big group scene and everybody's like learned a lesson or something like that. And then that's considered like the button on the Herald. But that's the format. And in reality, I don't know, to some people it might sound easy, but it's a very complex thing because as an improviser, number one, you have to remember all of these different universes. You have to remember what's going on in them. You have to remember what happened, who the characters are, where they take place, what were the props, all that stuff. Remember, none of that stuff physically exists. So it all has to be stored here. So while you're performing, you also have to be taking notes. And that's the one thing of like why heralds can fail, is because the actors are not paying attention and working as an ensemble. Sometimes what happens is an improviser might get addicted to the audience and getting laughs and doesn't really realize what else is going on and forgets and it falls apart. The other big thing that really hurts a herald is that you got to remember the audience has to follow the herald, right? If the audience doesn't know what universe that you're in the herald, they're going to be very confused and they're going to be like, well, I don't understand what's going on right now. I can't follow this, right? And remember, when you think about a play and in theater, it's very easy for the audience to follow a show because there's, characters and costumes and props and settings, and they know that when the set comes down, like, oh, hey, we're back in the park, and then they go here and like, oh, we're back in the dungeon, right? Improv, it's a little bit more complex. Remember, no set, no props, no nothing. So as an improviser, you have to master the art of being able to create what I believe should be a very strong character, because that is what's going to let the audience know what universe that you're in, for example, right? And I think that's where a lot of heralds tend to fail, is because the improvisers kind of just play a version of themselves improvising. And so it's hard to differentiate what universes we're in, because in every scene, the actors are kind of just playing the same character as the improvisers. That's why I believe in my method, which I think is an amazing method, is that every scene and every universe in part one of the Herald should be created by a strong character with a strong stance and a strong voice, a very unique, strong character that is memorable, right? And think of it like this. We're not reinventing the wheel here. It's not rocket science. Like when you think of like movies and television, strong characters are what really stand out in our brain, right? With The Simpsons, we always think of Homer Simpson. So whenever we see Homer Simpson, we're like, we know this is The Simpsons. Same thing with the Herald, right? Your improvisers have to create strong characters so the audience knows what universe that they are in. So for example, if I create a universe and it's a scene about pirates and I come in and I'm all cockeyed, I'm like, hey, I'm a pirate. How's it going? Rawr. Right? My audience knows that when I get back into this physicality and I get back in this voice, that we're back in the pirate world. They also know that when this character, when they hear it and they see it in a completely different universe, they know, oh my God, that's the pirate guy, and now he's in this different scenario. So that's why in my method of the character-driven Herald, I believe it's very important for the improvisers to not only master the Herald, but master the art of very strong, over-the-top characters, because it helps to create a stronger base foundation in part one, and it also helps the audience really connect, and most importantly, be able to follow what's going on in the Herald. The other thing too, which I'll talk about in another video, is strong characters will naturally create a today's the day, which is pivotal when creating an improvised scene. So just to recap, the Herald, I believe the best method for a strong Herald has to be a character-driven Herald.